Ryder, Lyons, welcome to the Big 12, my man. I'm Pete Mundo. We are Heartland College Sports. We cover the Big 12, and we are always glad to have you here on the show, as always, as we talk about all the happenings in the most fun, the most entertaining, and dare I say best. I know that's going to trigger some of you. It really depends on your definition of best conference in college football. Thanks for being here. As always, make sure you are subscribed to the show. Some of you think you are, but you are not. And also, please leave us that 5-star rating and review on the podcast. So glad you're here as always. How about those BYU Cougars? They land the first 5-star prospect. Well, I shouldn't say the first, the second 5-star prospect of the 2026 cycle. And it's Ryder Lyons, Folsom, California, deciding that he is going to play with the BYU Cougars as a member of the class of 2026. BYU beating out Oregon and Alabama for his services. You heard that right. BYU football, which has been a behemoth on the basketball recruiting trail, is now leaning into football in a way that a lot of us did not know whether or not they would do. Now, if you're a Utah fan, you might be watching this and you might be hating your life right now. Don't. Please don't. We need this league to gather as many 4- and 5-star prospects as possible in the years to come. Now, I've always said what the Big 12 does really well is take 3-star guys and develop them. But, of course, the game has changed, right? The game has changed in the sense that now Texas Tech can go out there and hammer the recruiting trail and the transfer portal, and they can land a monster class in January through April. But every coach is different. Every program is different. We still don't really know if that is a blueprint to big-time success year in, year out. What we do know is that if you recruit out of high school at a very high level and you hit on those high-level recruits and they buy into your program and your culture, what happens? You've got a winning product on your hand. That's what happens. I've always and still do believe that the high school recruiting model that does get overlooked by some is still going to be incredibly valuable moving forward. And in fact, I predict there might be a shift back towards the high school recruit where people say, you know what, maybe my best bet is to get these guys that I want out of high school, retain them at maybe a hometown discount. I think you're seeing some of that with the Iowa States and the Kansas States of the world, where they're still using their formula. And Matt Campbell has said as much at Iowa State, that his guys had offers. His guys could have left. They elected a lot of them to stay. Rocco Becht, his quarterback, could have cashed in somewhere else. He said, I'm staying right here at Iowa State. So hitting on your 3-star prospects, developing them, getting that buy-in, and realizing, you know what? Life's pretty good. And if I knock it out at Iowa State, I can go to the NFL. Look at what the Cyclones have put into the NFL the last few years. You don't necessarily need to chase guys in the transfer portal. You just don't need to do it. So that's where you have to consider a shift back to the high school rank at some point. And I also hope like heck, the portal window, there's not a portal window in April. That is just insane. And it's absurd that college football is still allowing it. But of course, the inmates are running the asylum and there's nobody in charge. So the first thing that college football has to do is close that April transfer portal window. After that, you have a little January window and that's it. Then you're done. That'll refocus things to the high school level as well. But this is a huge, huge moment this week for BYU to get a 5-star quarterback out of California, to beat out Oregon and to beat out Alabama. And every single Big 12 fan should be totally cool and excited about this. This will lift the entire conference. This is good for the entire conference. Competition breeds more competition. Competitive people at high levels of any industry want to compete with the best of the best. And now, if you're within the program at Texas Tech, if you're a big booster at Houston, if you are looking at this from Arizona State's perspective. You're like, whoa, this is the real deal. We've got to do something about this, and now we need to respond. But here's the thing. Did you know who the first five-star prospect was coming to the Big 12 before the news this week that Ryder Lyons would be joining BYU? I'll give you a second here. If you want to shout it out in the chat, you can do that. But I understand. I don't think most fans are going to know this. And I'm not saying that like, look at me. I didn't know this. I literally had to look this up. And I said, damn, that's impressive. And I didn't know this. The first five-star commitment in the class of 2026 to the Big 12. And there's only two. All right, Mitchell, you got it, my man. Winner, winner, chicken dinner, buddy. Nice job. Mitchell got it. It is Houston's quarterback, Keyshawn Henderson, out of Spring, Texas. He is the number 3 prospect in all of the class of 2026. A quarterback, the number 2 quarterback in all of high school football for the 2026 class, behind Faison Brandon out of Greensboro, North Carolina. He's going to Tennessee. He's the number 1 recruit in the nation next year. But Keyshawn Henderson out of Spring, Texas, is going to the Houston Cougars to join Willie Fritz. And he's the number 3 prospect in the country, according to 24/7 Sports. I like to use their platform. I like their model. I don't know where he's at with On3 or Rivals or anybody else. But the Houston Cougars, who we know have dough, they've spent it on basketball. They've got notable big-time boosters. Now they're spending it, at least at the high end thus far, they're willing to spend it on football. And if Houston starts spending its truckload of cash on football, well, that's going to be a big game changer as well. Now, of course, all this hinges on what exactly happens with the new salary cap model, the $20.5 million. There will be additional NIL, but it will be watched closer than it has been the last few years, where it's basically been a free-for-all. So the money's definitely going to come down. But getting to that 20.5 is going to be important, and that money is going to go up every single year, right? That's something else that isn't getting enough attention in this conversation. Every year, that number is going to increase. So from a Big 12 perspective, I think we know who the money teams are going to be at this point. At least we're getting a sense on who the money teams are going to be. We know that BYU is going to be in the conversation based on what they've done in football and also now in basketball, or I should say in basketball and now in football. We also think that Texas Tech, and know that Texas Tech is going to spend a lot of money. Heck, they are buying college softball players, for crying out loud. They've got money. We know what's going on there, okay? So that's a big deal. And then where else do you go in the Big 12? I still think that Houston is a sleeping giant. And that is something that's going to play out in the years to come. I look around and I say, well, what about Colorado? They seem to be spending pretty darn good in the transfer portal. Are guys giving Dion a bit of a discount because of who he is and who's on his coaching staff? Maybe, but they look like a program that is going to be willing to spend some money. I'm not convinced on what I'm seeing from many others in the conference, right? Like, am I going to sit here and tell you that I think that Iowa State, Kansas State, going to be dumping truckloads of money on players? I don't see that. I'm not knocking them. I don't see it for Oklahoma State. And they were one of the early, T. Boone Pickens mega booster guys, build your own stadium, knock out the facilities, do that whole deal. I don't get the sense that Oklahoma State is playing that game. Now, two programs that might sneakily be playing that game better than we expect could be TCU and Baylor. There's definitely money within those two universities. And I think they're playing it, but they're not showy about it. They're kind of taking the old guard, old money approach to this entire thing. Although Dave Aranda was bragging about paying players this past offseason, right? Or was it this past offseason in the spring, or was that last year? When you've got three little kids, your timelines get all out of whack. But some point in the last few months, Dave Aranda and his staff were rocking shirts saying, "We pay players." So they were very proud of the changes that they've made, obviously, to their program. But like, hey, who else you think is going to be that program or programs in the Big 12 that are going to step up to the plate with some big-time money and some big-time recruiting dollars to help fund the $20.5 million that these athletic departments are going to have to spend on basically a salary cap, plus any additional NIL dollars? I'm not trying to pick on your team. I'm not saying I left your team out for any specific reason. I'm just looking to find out who those Big 12 programs are going to be. That's what I'm looking for. And that's what I'm wanting to try to get a handle on right now. Pete Mundo on Heartland College Sports. It is so great to have you here as we talk about everything happening right now in the Big 12. So let me get to this then as well when it comes to recruiting. I looked up the top 15 recruits in the class of 2026 for college football. And here's the breakdown by conference. You ready? Now, not all of them have committed, so this is not 15 players. But here's the breakdown. SEC has 4. The Big 10 has 2. The Big 12 has 2. The ACC has 1. And then an independent, Notre Dame, has 1. If you want to put Notre Dame in the ACC, that's fine. SEC has 4. Big 10, Big 12, and ACC all have 2. That's not a wild spread. Now, this is not me sitting here and telling you that I believe we're going to be in a position, in a place where the Big 12 is suddenly knocking down the door of the SEC. I'm not doing that. I mean, our guy Derek Duke wrote an awesome piece on the website, heartlandcollegesports.com, and why the Big 12 deserves more respect than the SEC. I thought he laid out the case very well in terms of when you factor in, the fact that it's a top-heavy conference, Georgia, Alabama, who really win the Natties, along with one LSU title. When you throw in the help from ESPN, the 8 conference games, the way the deck is stacked in their favor, he lays out the case. You can agree or disagree, and you can read it at heartlandcollegesports.com. But what I will say is that in this new world, it's entirely possible that the Big 12 and the ACC, to some extent, are able to close the gap with the SEC and the Big 10 by having more of a level playing field when it comes to recruiting out of high school, having some of the right donors for certain programs who can assist on that revenue, and then also utilizing the transfer portal effectively. A lot of the Blue Bloods are not as deep when it comes to their second and third string guys as they used to be because those players are transferring out. Now, some are big misses, but, when you hit on these guys, they're absolute studs. So that's why, in part, the college football playoff model of 4-4-2-2 for automatic bids for the SEC, the Big 10, the ACC, and the Big 12, I hate. Because what the SEC and the Big 10 were trying to do there is stack guaranteed bids into a system that basically didn't allow for a lot of level playing field or level competition on the playing field. It just didn't allow for it if you're stacking the deck that heavily in their favor, where you're doubling their automatic bids because they're the SEC. What if they're not the SEC in 10 years? I'm not predicting that. I'm just saying you don't know and I don't know what this sport is going to look like in 5 years, let alone 10 years. Could you have predicted the past 10 years in college football? Some of you will say, yes, that's fine. Pat yourself on the back. You get my point. This league and this sport is completely unpredictable right now. So I can't sit here in good faith and tell you that the Big 12 is going to be in the same exact position it is right now. Therefore, it is only worthy of 2 automatic bids, while the SEC and the Big 10 are worth 4 each. Like right now, today, 2 automatic bids for the Big 12 actually sounds pretty good. But why would you pigeonhole yourself into a position when you don't know what the future holds? Now you're rolling the dice a little bit, right? Because there might be a world where the Big 12 and the ACC become the minor leagues. That could happen too. I don't think it's going to. I don't see the evidence to suggest that's going to happen. BYU just picked up a 5-star recruit, right? That's what we're talking about here on the show. That's where we started this conversation. Ryder Lyons is going to Provo. BYU is kicking butt in basketball recruiting. I know football is the main, obviously, revenue generator, but you get the point. Houston has the number 3 2026 prospect in all of college football. All right. So you look right now at some of these recruiting rankings. And by the way, you look at the 24/7 sports rankings and you look at BYU, they're right now just in the top 30 at about 29. But when you look at the average rating for their recruit, it's an 87.93, which is like top 15, maybe top 20 in the country. It is so good. I always like to look at the average rating for recruits because to me that tells the story versus just pure numbers for 2026. So that gives you a little more perspective on what exactly BYU is doing right now. And Kansas is doing great on the recruit trail too. So this is something that has to be noted. Think about what the future of college football is going to look like. It's much more complex and there's much more to it than I think most of us are giving credit to and talking about. So when we say, hey, the Big 12 should do the 4-4-2-2 model because, well, it's better than 5 automatic bids, 1 in each conference, plus 11 at-large bids because they'll stack that for the SEC. I'll roll the dice with that every day until on Sunday. I will roll the dice on it. Because if we get ESPN out of the way, and I say that, knowing that ESPN is always going to be a major power player in college football, but once again, who's to say Apple, Google, Amazon don't come in and get heavily involved in college football in the years to come? What then happens? ESPN's stranglehold over the sport will lessen. ESPN is not in a great financial shape. They are basically just trying to buy product to slow down their demise. They're doing it with the NBA, they're doing it with the NFL, and they've done it with college football. But at some point, these tech giants are going to get in the game, and they're going to spend enormous sums of money. And that will fracture how we watch the sport, which will also fracture the center power we have in this sport, which is ESPN. What does that then look like when it comes to a college football playoff committee? How we rank these teams, how we perceive the value of strength of schedule, how we calculate strength of schedule. I know there's been a lot reported here lately by people like Josh Pate, who does a tremendous job. He's been on the show many times, and I totally respect his work. And he's right to point out that the SEC wants to basically change the way strength of schedule is formulated and calculated, which then will create a world where the SEC, once again, gets heavily favored based on how they calculate strength of schedule. Ross Dellinger has reported that. Josh Pate has talked about this as well. And I'm not afraid of that because I do think you're starting to see some chinks in the armor of what the SEC has done in terms of stacking the entire sport in its favor. And with BYU able to lock up a 5-star quarterback, Houston able to lock up a 5-star quarterback, Texas Tech able to bring in one of the best transfer portal classes we've ever seen in the era of the transfer portal, that stuff is how the Big 12 continues to make a difference on the field. And then they've got to get to the playoff and they've got to start winning some of these games. And you've got to make sure that you continue to successfully push back on the narrative. Arizona State did a great job of this last year. They nearly pulled it off in the comeback against Texas. Some say, myself included, they were a bogus BS garbage call away from potentially winning that game. I don't think that's saying too much. We all get it, right? We all understand the name of the game and how this thing gets played. So from a Big 12 perspective, I'm good with everything that has gone on right now. The insanity. We pumped the brakes on how to expand and how to play out the college football playoff in 2026 and beyond. The Big 12 is getting some small wins. And it's just like this in business. It's like this in the real world, right? It's how we grew Heartland College sports in large part. We stacked a lot of small wins. Now, you have moments in a business career and a sports career that you can look back to where you say that was a pivotal moment for this business, for this team, for this sport, for this program. I think about that in 10 years of running Heartland College sports. I started this thing in 2014 with a laptop, having no clue what I was doing. We're here 10 years later, and we're reaching, millions of you every single year. And we're so grateful you're here, and we would love for you to right now subscribe to the show, like the show as well, like the video on YouTube. And if you are on the podcast, leave us that 5-star rating and review, Apple, Spotify. That would mean the world to us because you've helped us with just brick by brick, day by day, small win by small win. But you think about some of the big wins. I think about expansion 2021, OU Texas leaving. That was a big moment for us, as you could imagine, right? We all have them. For the Big 12 right now, they're stacking small wins. They're just doing it layer by layer, day by day, week by week. It's cliche, but it can work. Okay, this gap can close. And I'm completely fine with how this is playing out. But there is certainly a lot to celebrate right now with the Big 12, with great recruiting recently, with good moves on the college football playoff front, the development of that. And I'm here for it, man. I really am. And I hope that you are here for it as well as a Big 12 fan. Even you Utah fans, please don't be upset by this, all right? Let's cheerlead for the Big 12 because this thing is moving in the right direction. If you want to win some Heartland College sports merch, well, what do? You leave that 5-star rating and review as I flash it here on the podcast. You send me an email of your rating and review to Pete Mundo at heartlandcollegesports.com. Just take a screenshot, send it to me. And each week we are sending merch to the best rating and review that we are getting. You guys are fantastic. Thank you, as always, for being here as a part of the show. Let us know where you're watching from. We got Brian in Lindstrom, Minnesota tonight. See, who else do we have in the house? I'm trying to scroll through some of these comments. We got Saudi Arabia in the house. He said, good morning from Saudi Arabia, go Cougs. And I think that's the Houston Cougars, based on how he spelled it. All right. I mean, geez. Brent's in Morgantown. I don't know if we can beat that. Roy's in Springville, Utah. We've got John in Fritch, Texas, although he's between Fritch and Sanford. All right. There you go. Good stuff there. I don't know. Saudi Arabia's got to take the cake. Dodge City. What's up out in Dodge City there, Dallas? Lubbock is in the house with Jared. Southern California as well. Good stuff. I'll leave you with my Dodge City, Kansas story. I was living in Woodward, Oklahoma from 2011 to 2013. Great folks there at K101 Radio and Z92. I'm now in Kansas City. Was in New York City in between there. But after high school basketball season ended, I was working every Friday, Saturday night, especially at the end during the playoffs. First weekend off. I guess we weren't married. We were still dating, not yet engaged. But now my wife, Kate, and I decided we got to go up to Dodge City. The history, everything else. I wanted to drive up to Dodge from Woodward, Oklahoma, about maybe an hour and a half or so. Maybe it's 2 hours. We get up there. So it's 2012. Of course, we're in a presidential election year. And we go to the Dodge City Museum down there, which is really cool and quaint. And right down the road, what do I see? My first ever Godfather's Pizza. And if you are somewhat of a political junkie, you will remember that Herman Cain was the guy running in 2012, rest in peace, Herman Cain, who was the Godfather's Pizza man. And I've got a photo of the Godfather's Pizza that is still on my phone somewhere from 13 years ago. The first Godfather's Pizza I ever saw was in Dodge City, Kansas. And with that, we will put a bow on this show. I did not think I'd be talking about Godfather's Pizza tonight. And for the record, I have not had it. I'm sorry. I am a tough critic on pizza. And that is something I'm sure we can have a whole show about some other time. Have a great night. Go Big 12. If you're not on the Heartland College Sports Forums, join us. They're free. We just love to interact with fellow Big 12 fans at heartlandcollegesports.com. We'll see you there. Go Big 12.